And just as God stepped out of his comfort zone in heaven, if you like, to come down to earth and to minister to us and to reach us and to seek and save the lost, so we've got to be better and bolder at stepping out of our comfort zones to seek and save the lost who are around us today with the help of God's Spirit. And as we took an honest look at ourselves as a church community, we sensed that mission wasn't our organising principle at the moment. If anything, most of our small groups were revolved around Bible study and looking after each other and pastoral care and so on. And those are wonderful things, but they're not the goal of church. They're not supposed to be the thing which is our organising principle, the thing which we structure ourselves around as a church. If love and nurture becomes our raison d'etre, our reason for being, then actually we become inward-looking, and an inward-looking mission mission becomes more of a bolt-on extra rather than something which everyone does. An inward-looking community will ultimately die, wither out and die. And so that was our fear for us as a church. And it's because Jesus wants us to be proactive in going out, in seeking and saving the lost. Those are proactive words, aren't they? That we feel that God is calling us to turn our church community inside out, not to give up on loving each other and nurturing each other, not at all, but to love and nurture each other as we go out to seek and save the lost, and to look to the needs of our community, our city and our world. I was really encouraged a few months ago. I got an email from a member of the congregation who talked about how she used to stop and chat with homeless people on the streets years ago. And for some reason she had stopped doing that. But in her email she said that one of the services we did, which mentioned homelessness, and I quote, was a wake-up call for me. And she said, I've decided to talk with these people once more, only this time taking it a few steps further if possible, and end up, after time, letting them know the love Jesus has for them. It is my part of turning the church community inside out. I realise this will not be done in my strength, only with Jesus walking with me, and only if it is his will. And that was so encouraging. And she was absolutely spot on. You know, it's going to take little steps out of our comfort zones for each and every one of us if we're going to turn our whole church community inside out. And we're only going to be able to do it with God's strength. We can't do it in our own strength. And our original vision paper, which we gave out 18 months or so ago, identified three particular things which this vision may begin to require of us and may begin to look like over the coming years. And I just want to pick up on some of those things. And first we said that the biblical model of mission was to do mission together. So God didn't send out people one by one. Actually, Jesus sent out his disciples 2 by 2 in mission teams. And the Apostle Paul always went with other people when he was going on mission trips. And so we want to establish communities with a focused mission. We want to be doing mission together, not just isolated by ourselves. Because mission is scary, isn't it? All of us find mission scary, and the thought of engaging with other people with the love of Jesus, we find that scary. But it's easier to do if we do it together. Hence these communities of mission. And mission is messy. You know, getting involved in the lives of people who are broken and hurting and needy, that is always messy. And that's too much for us to take on by ourselves. But actually to do it as communities with a focused mission, that is more manageable. That God uses our different gifts to serve others. And so the PCC commissioned some pilot missional communities and groups of people who are united by a common mission, a focused mission, and looking to serve our local area in a particular way. We launched the first one just over a year ago. We launched a third one about 6 months or so ago. And we're just going to watch a short video now which gives us a little update on how our 3 missional communities are doing.
We are All Sorts Missional Community. It used to be a Young Families Missional Community, but we changed our name to All Sorts because we wanted a name. Everybody else has cool names, so we thought we should have a cool name.
So our aim is to reach out to teenagers, to get alongside them, whether they're teenagers that sort of grown up in church, or whether they're teenagers in the local community.
Well, the aim of the missional community is to bring a hope, essentially, to people in Shirley who are struggling financially.
include all sorts of families in all sorts of activities in trying to bring those who don't know Jesus to have a chance, an opportunity to meet with people who do know Jesus and to understand more of what it means to follow him.
Live life with them, talk to them as they encounter different situations in their lives.
There's a real emphasis on inviting friends along to the different services and events that we put on.
We eat lots of yummy food and we chat about the Bible. We learn about God.
We've done some Cap Money courses, so actually giving some people some practical tools in how to manage their finances. Some of us as individuals are doing some one-to-one befriending, so with Cap Money clients and just people we've got to know in the community.
We do activities and games.
Sometimes it's things like pancake parties and firework parties, or just to simply meet in the park, spend time together, eat cake. Food seems to feature quite often, which is just a great way of getting together and spending time together.
Probably the biggest thing that we do yearly is the Noise project. So we go into this social action projects in and around Shirley, where we're litter picking or going to old people's homes and singing it and talking to them.
We eat potato.
But it looks different in the sense that we are very intentionally being community.
I think in some ways being a missional community gives us permission to be that outward focused group, to be that not just confined to set boundaries, but actually look at ways to engage with our community, look at ways to reach out and kind of help us to just be a bit more focused and a bit more channeled in what we do.
So we have gathered around a common mission, and that's part of our missional community. For example, when we were a cell group, but we're also doing CAP things, we would be doing cell and having a cell meeting, but in the same week we were also doing CAP Money and we were getting very busy, whereas now our missional community is all around that. Actually, we do that instead of, and we might meet in another way and in a social way. So rather than actually being more busy, I think it's made us less busy, but what we're doing is much more focused on the mission.
The youth are definitely more focused on their friends. We're seeing people bring new people along quite often. At the baptisms that we had last week, there were a couple of guys there, both of whom were brought along by their friends from non-church backgrounds, who came and made that commitment, and that was through people in our youth work just being outward looking and being missional. I think that change in focus, that shift in mindset has been what's really great. It would be great to have more families within the church as part of our missional community, or even just doing mission with us. It might not be that they're part of our group, but that we're encouraging each other in our mission to other families.
It just took us a while to work out what is it that we're doing as a missional community? What are we doing as adults? How does that work?
What's gone well? Just the number of people who are really excited and wanted to join us has been really encouraging, and that we've got different age ranges, people from all different backgrounds. We're quite a disparate group, if you like.
What has been one of the really good things is the joined up kind of thinking, that we've been able to talk to superstars and liaise with what we're doing and try and link up with inviting people who've been to superstars to things that we're doing, and vice versa. And the same with, say, something like Amy's film afternoons, trying to link up things that are going on. And the only way we could do that really is as a missional community, because that's what we're focused on that, and so therefore we can talk to others in the church who are doing similar things.
I've been really encouraged by how our missional communities are progressing and coming along. Some people talk about the three dimensions that missional communities have: up, in and out. The up dimension is to do with our relationship with God. And so that's to do with praying, worshipping, reading the Bible, learning from God and so on. The in dimension is to do with the relationships with each other and developing that sense of community. And particularly as these missional communities have been quite new, that's been a really important dimension to focus on. And then the out dimension, well, that's to do with a particular focus mission that these communities have, be it the families or the teenagers or people in financial hardship. And so although they're called missional communities, mission isn't the only thing they do. If we only ever do the outward stuff, actually we will burn out. And so it's vital that we do the upward stuff, developing our relationship with God and doing it as a community, working on our community relationships as well. But there's an equal danger, and if other groups in the church only ever do the upward stuff, the Bible and prayer, and the inward stuff, the looking after each other, but forget the outward stuff, well, actually, eventually they will fizzle out, because they'll be so inward looking that they're not able to draw more people in, either to the group or to the kingdom. And we're in the business of kingdom growth, aren't we? We're in the business of seeing people come to faith in Christ. And so we can't just be having inward looking groups. Just to talk about the future of missional communities a little bit, the PCC did a review. We've learned some lessons from what's happened over the last year, and we're giving a go-ahead to launch some more. And Nigel Hughes, our local mission coach, has been wonderfully beavering around behind the scenes, having a whole series of conversations. And let me just give you an update on where those are up to. We've had a couple of meetings with those who do various ministries at the moment connected with older people in our church. And we're just asking the question, well, should these different groups, things like Sunday at 3 and Evergreens and Luncheon Club and the care homes and so on, some daytime cell groups, should we be thinking in a bit more of a joined up way about these groups? And should we be thinking about how mission unites us as we seek to serve older people in our community? We all know that the number of older people in our community is going up and up and up at the moment, simply because life expectancy is going up and up and up. And we know that those longer lives are sometimes characterised by loneliness and by ill health. And there's so much need amongst older people in our community. And so we want to make sure that we're serving and reaching our older people, not just in our church community, but in the wider community as well. We've had we're starting a series of meetings with some people who are concerned about internationals and recognise that actually the number of people from overseas but living long-term in Shirley is increasing all the time. The schools will tell you that the number of children with English as a second language has increased rapidly over the last few years, and that's only going to continue. So we're thinking, okay, well, how can we as a church, how can we be recognising this need in our local community, this opportunity within our local community, and how can we serve these people together? And so we're having these conversations, and I'd love some sort of community with a focused mission on serving internationals to emerge over the coming months. A friend of mine in Sheffield is in a missional community doing just that, and they serve a lot of immigrants and university students in their local area there. And wonderful stories about people from all sorts of different nations and backgrounds coming to faith and being baptised and so on. And of course, many people from overseas are far more open to the gospel than the white Brits are. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for us to share the love of Jesus with people from around the world without us having to go overseas. We're having some meetings about a potential missional community to do with men. We've had a men's cell group here, which has been quite missional for a number of years, and independently we've restarted some men's events over the last year. And now we're asking the question, well, how can we build on that? How can we build on that together? And what is God calling us to do to be intentional and missional in this area? We'll know that the church has got far more women in than men. That's not just our church, that's nationally, isn't it? And probably internationally. So we need to be intentional about trying to reach men for Christ. You know, Jesus called hardened fishermen and other hardened people to follow him. We need to be doing the same in this local area. But we're not being exclusive about that, because we recognise that actually reaching men often happens through women. And so we're just having these conversations at the moment, and we'll see what emerges. We've been having some discussions with some in our 20s and 30s cell about how they can be intentionally missional to this crucial generation in the local area. And a suggestion someone made just the other day, the NHS. I know that many people here work in the NHS in one capacity or another. We've got the General Hospital, one of the biggest employers in Southampton, just on our doorstep. Should we be gathering people around with a focused mission on serving the NHS as one of our potential missional communities? Who knows? Well, God knows. And maybe we'll start that sort of conversation over the coming weeks and months. And if anyone here fancies being involved in any of those sorts of ideas that we've shared with you now, then come and find me or come and find Nigel. We'd love to include you in those conversations as we discern whether or not those are right. And just to reiterate, just as you don't have to have a young family to be part of the All Sorts missional community, just as you don't have to have teenagers to be part of the Buzz missional community, so you don't need to be an older person to be part of an older people's missional community serving older people, or you don't have to work in the NHS to be part of a missional community serving the NHS. These communities are open to all. And I know that some people feel, actually, I haven't got the time to be part of a missional community. Well, I hope one of the people on the video there shared that actually being part of a missional community doesn't necessarily take up more time than being part of a cell group. I know some people feel that actually they haven't got the emotional capacity to be part of a missional community at the moment. They don't feel strong enough to be able to give out to other people. And I can fully understand that. But actually, I'm so encouraged that Jesus uses each one of us where we're at. No matter what brokenness or bruising we've got, actually he can use us, and sometimes he deliberately uses us because of our brokenness and our bruisedness. But he uses us to minister to others. Others are a little bit cynical about missional communities, thinking, well, this is just the latest fad or the latest thing that the latest vicar is trying. And for those of you who've been around the church for 10, 20, 30 years, I can understand that. Each vicar does come along and suggest something new, don't they? But actually, the heart behind it is we've got to be doing more to reach our community. We can't rest on our laurels. And if what we've been doing in the past hasn't quite worked, well, we need to try something else. And if this doesn't quite work, well, we'll try something else again. And if that doesn't quite work, well, we'll try something else again. But what we cannot do if we're Christians passionate for God's glory and passionate to see people come into his kingdom is to sit back and do nothing. We have got to try, or rather try and fail than not try at all. So that's one element, establishing communities with a focused mission. Another element is beginning to explore spiritual issues in creative ways which seem quite unlike ordinary church services, but which are going to be more effective at actually helping make disciples of Jesus Christ. Some people call this fresh expressions of church. And it's a recognition that what we do here on a Sunday morning isn't the only way of doing church, and sometimes isn't the best way, definitely isn't the best way to make disciples of Jesus Christ, particularly for those with no church background whatsoever. And so I'm delighted that 6 months ago we launched Superstars, and that is our one attempt to be reaching families in our local area for Christ. Families who've got no church background, who wouldn't come to a normal church service here, but will come to something down at Wordsworth which is wonderfully informal. But you see, what we're doing down there, we're looking at Bible stories, we're worshipping God, we're spending time together as a community. That's the definition of a church. And so it is just as much church that is happening at Superstars as it is church that's happening here. And I would love it if over the coming years people were coming to faith as part of Superstars and we were baptising people in Wordsworth to celebrate their newfound faith in Jesus. We wouldn't have to bring them back here to baptise them. We could baptise them in Wordsworth because that is their church. And in a small way, that's what we've done here with S2 services over the last 4 months, just beginning to explore spiritual issues in a slightly different way to normal. And I know it's not everyone's cup of tea that we sit around discussing, but actually some people are going to find that much more manageable and accessible as a way to find out about Jesus and what Jesus means for ordinary life and what faith in Jesus looks like. And so that's just beginning to explore spiritual issues in slightly more creative ways. And we're going to have to do lots more experimenting, not just Superstars and S2, but lots more experimenting as well over the coming years. We won't always get it right, but if we don't try, then we definitely won't get it right, and we definitely won't be reaching others. And finally, a third element that our vision paper mentioned was we need to be open to meeting in secular spaces instead of behind closed doors or in sacred spaces. One recent piece of research asked how people felt about the concept of church. And just over a third of over 50s felt positive about the church, but a quarter felt negative about the church. And that would be partly to do with church as an institution rather than church as a building, but it highlights the sort of the obstacles that we have to overcome, even in the over 50s generation. And take that down to the 18 to 30-year-olds generation, and only 1 in 5 18 to 30-year-olds feel positive about church. And fully half of 18 to 30-year-olds feel actively negative about church. That is a huge barrier that we need to overcome. And actually, doing our gathering behind closed doors or in sacred spaces like this is just putting up an unnecessary obstacle for people to hear about Jesus. And as it happens, Superstars is meeting out in a more secular space. But the principle here is that we want to be going to where people are at. And what is the place within our parish where most people are at? The place with the highest footfall? Well, actually, it's the high street. And so we'd love to develop something over the next few years, something down on the high street, which is going to give us opportunity to build community and to meet with people where they're at. And the PCC has given Amy the go-ahead and the encouragement to explore what that might look like. So Amy, come up and give us a few minutes on what that might look like for us to develop this.
Okay, brilliant. Oh, I'm really nervous. Silly, isn't it? Okay. So when I lived in Bristol, there was a coffee shop just down the road from me, which had this as their mission statement. Historically, community was based around the local church. This moved on to the local pub on every high street. But now, more often than not, it's the local cafe. And so this mission statement, this kind of idea was from a secular cafe in Bristol who were passionate about their locality and passionate about creating community. And I think if you spend any time on any high street, not just the one in Shirley, but on the Gloucester Road where I lived in Bristol, you see that's the truth actually. You see more and more people gathered around tables in coffee shops than you ever do in not just our church, but the church generally. Several years ago, I believe that God gave me a real heart for high streets. It's not just because I really like shopping, but I think there's something a little bit more to it. How actually I am passionate about community, and that's where a lot of our community happens. And throughout my time at college, this kind of heart passion turned into a little bit more, and I'd started to think through my initial vision for my ministry. And then on coming here, I can really look back and see the kind of nudges that I think God has given me over the last 5 years or so. So really briefly, I'd like to share with you my vision for, my initial vision for the high street, for our high street, and then I'd just like to talk you through 2 cafe projects that have really inspired me to get to the place that I am in today, just to give you an idea what this could look like. So the dream is to have a space on Shirley High Street which functions as a community hub. First of all, it would be a really excellent cafe that served really great food and really great coffee. But it would also run access schemes so that everybody in Shirley could access that good, healthy food and coffee, and I'll explain a little bit about that later. We'll be able to offer some of the 20% in our parish who are unemployed job opportunities, as well as some kind of training scheme to help build them up and put them back on their feet. And our parish is in the bottom 20% for child poverty in Hampshire, and I am not okay with that, and we need to do something about that, something looking at all the 150 days that kids aren't fed in school. We need to look at providing some local food, some food for those children. So my hope is that we'll be able to offer a space for families and for single people, people of all ages to come and be together and be community. So as well as being an amazing cafe and offering some support for food for other people, I want us to be a place of financial light in our high street. In the 0.3 miles of our high street, I haven't counted that, Google told me that, there are 12 shops that provide an easy financial fix for people. Whether that is a variety of betting shops, whether that's the Bright House, whether it's the pawnbroker shops. Actually, we're in such a small concentrated area, we have people being readily accessible to quick fix answers. Actually, I'd love this to be a light in that 0.3 miles. I'd love this to be somewhere that people can come and get financial help, can get debt counselling, can be linked into someone who's going to help them. And we're just in conversations with a few people about how we do that well at the moment. And finally, it will be a space for us as a church to use. So missional communities can use it, Alpha will be able to use it, as well as some secular organisations in the city, so like local health organisations and social services. That is the big dream. That we as a church create space in Shirley which is accessible for people from all walks of life, to share food together and to share life together, sat around a table. And what if we could bring those people who would never even talk to each other, never even look at each other together in one space? What would that look like for us as Shirley, and what would that look like for us as church? And the dream of really bringing these kind of very separate groups of people together started a few years ago when I was working in this cafe here. It's called The Kitchen in Bristol. This is our YMCA-run cafe. It's really amazing and does some great food. And it's a really lovely space to be in. And the people they have coming through the doors are a real mix because it's run by the YMCA. They have a lot of teenagers come in, and often they're teenagers who are in some difficulty, often in some trouble, and they come in. As well as them, it's very close to the hospital like we are, so they have a lovely work crowd come in, as well as kind of the yummy mummies use it for their lovely baby chinos, and as well as it offers a suspended coffee scheme, so those who cannot afford food can come in and can eat food that someone else has already pre-purchased for them. And this is amazing. This mismatched group of people find themselves sat on tables next to each other. You have mums sat next to teenagers who've been kicked out of their own homes. You have professional work people sat next to people who are homeless and have nowhere else to eat. And actually they've created this bonkers but amazing community in this space, when actually everybody is just taken for who they are. There is absolutely no judgment on anyone who goes there, and together they are community. Another cafe which has inspired me is called Kahala, and it's on Brick Lane in London, so slightly different from our little Shirley High Street. This was set up by a Baptist minister about 5 or 6 years ago and is regularly voted one of the top coffee shops in London. And it has this to say on their website: "We are church, but not church as you might understand it. We live in a relationship with God and with each other, and we see ourselves as family rather than institution. All we are a group of people who aim to live life in all its fullness, understanding that the teaching of Jesus Christ brings that fullness to everybody, even in a cafe." So their aim is to be church on Brick Lane. I don't know if you've ever spent any time down Brick Lane, but it's, again, in Tower Hamlets, which is one of the poorest boroughs in the UK. They're doing amazing stuff there, reaching out to people who have nowhere else to go for food, who have nowhere else to go for help. But as well as that, they meet people and they create space to explore faith. So on a Wednesday night in Kahala, they have a church service. If you turned up expecting something like this, you wouldn't be happy. But they meet together, they worship God, they read the Bible, they love each other, and they love and they welcome in the stranger. So Kahala and The Kitchen really have inspired me and inspired me for my vision on our high street. And there are several other churches up and down the UK that do this, that have run spaces that are in essence secular to meet people where they are. And these have all been set up with the hope of reaching people for Jesus Christ. And I'd love it if it was us who could join that amazing list of churches who have stepped out in faith to bring the gospel afresh to their area. That's my sales pitch. If this was Dragon's Den, you could give me some money now. If you are even vaguely interested in having a coffee with me on the high street, and to even just think these things through, then come and grab me and chat afterwards. We've got lots to do and lots to go, lots of places to go, but I really hope that you're encouraged by some of this morning. Come and chat with me about any of this if you'd like to.
Great, thank you, Amy. And wouldn't it be fantastic to see something like one of those cafes established on our high street and serving our local area here? I think that would be amazing. And as Amy said, yes, we've got a huge amount of work to do, so carry on refining the vision, and look at properties and build up business plans and work out finance and all sorts of things. But if other churches can do it, we can do it. And if God is behind this, he will provide for it, and he will lead us forwards. And if we're going to seek and save the lost, then this is exactly the sort of thing that we need to be doing to reach our local area for Christ. Going to where people are rather than waiting for people to come to us. And so that's a bit of an update with where we've got to with our vision and what plans are for the coming months as well. And let's continue to pray and work towards the end that God is calling us to turn our church community inside out. And I wonder, are you up for carrying on this sort of journey? I hope you are. I hope you are. We will all need to step outside of our comfort zones if we're going to be able to do this. If we're going to carry on establishing these communities of focused mission, if we're going to carry on exploring spiritual issues in creative ways, if we're going to set things up so that we can meet in secular spaces as well as in sacred spaces. But remember how far Jesus stepped out of his comfort zones in order to seek and save us. So much that he gave up from the glory and the splendour and the rights of heaven to come and be born in a dirty, dingy stable. So much he gave up. And so if God can step out of his comfort zone that much for us, surely we can step out of our comfort zones with his help to serve our local area. So let's carry on this journey together as God leads us. Let's stand together and we'll pray and